Hello, Facebook. Evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. This is Debby Enoe from Teacher Success Coach with another episode on the challenges and triumphs of online teaching during this pandemic at the Female Educators Roundtable. I've got another female educator from around the world. She's going to introduce herself and tell us where she's from, the school, the lessons she teach, the age group she teach, etc. Over to you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello, everyone. My name is Osa Oyegun. I am a Nigerian American teacher, currently teaching in Abuja. And I teach at an international school here. I teach second grade, which I think is year 3 in the UK, 7 and 8 year olds. And I am their classroom teacher. I teach maths, literacy, science, and social studies to my students. And I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you very much for accepting the offer to come online to tell the world the true story of educators, what we do, and how similar our experiences are, whether or not we're in England or any other country, America, Canada, wherever. Our challenges and our triumphs, especially online, are very much the same. Right, what we are looking at is the length of lessons or the duration of lessons during this period. Right. Should we have the same length of the lesson as we would normally have in the classroom, i.e. my lessons in the classroom is normally 1 hour, 45 minutes to an hour, mostly an hour. The question is, should we actually be trying, I'm using the word trying to engage our students for an hour online? Because we know trying to engage them for an hour in the physical classroom can be very challenging. Could you imagine when we are there with them in the physical classroom to when we are not even close to them? All we've seen is the facial expression on the screen. We have no control whether or not they get up and leave us while we are trying to teach them. So the question is, should it be the same length?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We should not be trying to teach hour-long lessons via distance learning, especially in the case of younger students. We have 40-minute lesson periods in my school, and of those 40 minutes, besides transitions, if I'm teaching a new topic or a new concept, I need to make sure that that time, the actual teaching where I need them to learn something new, is limited to 5 to 10 minutes. And that's in the classroom. And then they need to switch activities because in terms of their ability to remember that information or to keep on receiving information, that decreases the longer I go on and on. So I don't want me to be the center of my lesson. I want them to go off and do things and sort of practice that concept and practice their learning and go and do independent activities. So that's in the classroom. And when we switch to distance learning, I needed to be really mindful of the fact that I was no longer near my students to guide them. A lot of what they would be doing would be independent, and their parents may not be able to assist them. So I needed to make sure I stuck to that short window of time in terms of teaching new concepts. And then switch it up. Now you're going to go off and practice what I've said. I've modeled it for you. Go and practice that, and then come back and tell me your experience. Do a reflection. And then maybe here's another activity that's completely different, but also related to this concept. And to just keep it short, because this was not actually distance learning. This was crisis learning and crisis teaching. And that's something that we have to continue to keep in mind. We shouldn't try to move everything over exactly the way it was in the classroom, because the world isn't exactly the same during this period.
Yeah, I do agree with that. However, I've had a number of educators telling me that they're teaching some of them from 9 o'clock until 4 or 5 o'clock.
Mm.
And, let's say they teach different subjects, they're teaching the different subjects, they might have a few groups to show the day. Or if they have the same group, they teach it as if they're in school. One of my issue with all of that is, even if you're in the classroom, we know that the brain could only take small chunk at a time.
Right, right,
So therefore, I feel that is important that we need to ensure that.
right.
However, the issue is the administrators in the school feel that this is how they ought to have it, not taking into consideration how the mind operates. And that's quite
How the
sad for me.
mind. Yes, I agree with you completely. I think if teachers are doing distance learning from 9 to 4 every single day, administrators perhaps don't know that planning for distance learning is twice as much work as it takes to plan for when you're in the classroom. Because again, no one's done this before. This was not what our training programs, our master's degrees prepared us to do. And our students aren't trained to learn this way either. So teachers have to work twice as hard to come up with lessons that we think are going to have the highest potential for efficacy from a distance, right? We have to know who our students are. We have to look at the material that we have to present to them and make sure they know within this period. And all of that takes twice as long because we're no longer able to use the same materials that we had access to that we would have used had we been on campus, had we been at school. So all of that takes so much more planning. And to say, I need you to teach online learning as if you were at school from 9 to 4 is unrealistic. It's counterproductive. And it makes it really hard for teachers to be as resilient as they normally are. It'll wear you down. And when you're worn down, you're not as good of a teacher as you normally are.
That's very true, because it means that you are not productive because you are so exhausted.
Exactly.
And those could be some of the reasons or some of the challenges that educators say, what, I want to leave this job.
Exactly.
Because then, they're not, administrators are not being realistic. Because when one teacher mentioned that to me, I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
I said that is challenging, that they have to also log on all day.
Log on all day, and a negative side effect of that, you're staring at a screen all day, which means so are your students. So your health is once again being negatively impacted by the work you're doing. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. So how do you what does your timetable look like?
Well, I was lucky enough to be a member of a group where other teachers had already been doing distance learning for maybe about a month or 5 weeks before me. And so I found other teachers who taught the same grade level, grade 2, year 3, and asked them what had worked well for them, worked for the age, worked for them in terms of everything they had to teach. And what I found was the students needed something consistent. They needed to feel as if they had a connection to our class. And so we had a morning meeting every day. I had a morning meeting message for my students in which I asked a question and modeled answering the question for them. And then they shared it with everyone. And once they had shared their answer, they had to go and watch a friend's answer and leave a comment for them too. So there was that interaction. And then we met as a class twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, because I had students in different time zones, and I had to be I had to offer a sort of a balance in terms of making sure that everyone could participate in the class, whether you were here in Nigeria, whether you had returned to the US, whether you had gone to the UK, everyone would have an opportunity every single day to join the class meeting, to ask questions about a concept, or to have a lesson with me, one-on-one, small group lesson, to play games as a class, to talk about what was happening wherever we were. It was a very open, malleable format that helped my student maintain that connection to our class, to me. And then it also helped me gauge how well I was doing. So just, I met with them every single day, and just made sure that there was space in the schedule for short breaks for me. So I'd take screen breaks and make sure I wasn't staring at the screen. And then I would come back and do my prep work, or look at the student submissions on Seesaw, which is where the students submitted their work, and leave them comments, and just continue my planning for the next day or whenever I needed to plan for. So I can't imagine being online from 9 to 4, like being, being in front of the children, and then after that having to go and look at the work they've done. Because then the work never ends. So it's not really 9 to 4, it's 9 to 4 and then some, which is really unfair and makes it hard for you to do that well. Yeah, so just having a consistent schedule that took care of the students and took care of myself, so that I could continue to do a good job for them, was helpful.
How did you find it, the fact that, you met with them and, you played games, and it was not, quote unquote, the normal time, the normal planned lessons as you would normally have? How did you find that in terms of the students, how they receive it, how they, how they connect with it? How did you find doing it like that? How was it?
Yeah, the majority of my students were very receptive, and they really enjoyed it, and they needed that connection. I found early on, if I didn't do a morning meeting question because I couldn't think of something clever enough to ask them, I'd get a complaint and say, hey, where's the morning meeting question? So-and-so really feels a connection to the class, and when it's not there, he gets anxious or worried. So I had to really make sure that I had consistency in that sense. But they really enjoyed it. They enjoyed meeting every day. They knew, and meeting at the same time as well, 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They really enjoyed having that consistency, because it felt a lot like what we would have done at school. We have our core lessons at the same time every day, and the children have the schedule memorized. And so this was a really good way to maintain that. I know they missed being at school, but this made it sort of a less painful way of changing how they learn. And at the end, I know that they continued to learn even during distance learning, and they actually grew a lot and became very independent learners, and were able to show their learning from a distance, because I wasn't there, and I could tell whose parents were supportive or were able to be supportive, and who felt they could do everything on their own. So that was really interesting for me as well.
So what was the attendance like online?
Let's see, it's in the beginning, it was most of my students. I have 19 students. And then there was a huge drop. And so I had to think of ways to remind them, to draw them back in. And so I set up a schedule, and I said, you may join me every single day if you wish, for one session, for the morning session or the afternoon session, or both, it doesn't matter. But on these particular days, I need to see these 4 or 5 students. You must meet with me on Mondays or on Tuesdays. And you can choose the morning session or the afternoon session, but you have to do it. And if you do it, then I'm going to give you points on Class Dojo. I bribed them. They were 7 and
Okay.
8 years old. I bribed them.
Exactly. Yes,
And
yes, yes, yes.
I mean, you do what you have to do. And then I'd say, this is the game we're going to play today. And if there was a new game that we're going to play, then I'd introduce that to you beforehand. So I'd send a little reminder 30 minutes before we're meant to meet and say, hey, join me in 30 minutes. We're going to play this game. Hi, baby. And I think you're really going to like it. And remember, you get dojo points for showing up. So anything I could do to remind them and to make it exciting for them, that's what we did. And they also sometimes got to choose the games we played as well. So they introduced new games and we learned it together and they would play together, and it was loads of fun.
Yeah. It's interesting. So how long was your lesson online?
Each lesson?
Yeah.
Okay, so the introductory lesson for new concepts, maybe 5 minutes, but for each subject, for each activity, that would be maybe somewhere between 10 to 20 minutes, depending on what we were doing, maximum.
Okay.
Maximum. And that's what I imagine, because at the end of the day, because all the children are at different places in their learning journey, what will take one student 10 minutes can take another student 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I did actually have a student and parent who complained that it took them hours, even though I knew that the work was not planned to take hours. I knew the majority of my students did not take hours, did not take even 1 hour. So it really depended on where the students were in their learning journal, and maybe whether a parent was deeply involved in that learning, because sometimes when parents are involved, they're going for perfection. And that's not what this is about. If I can't see what mistakes a student is making, then I can't plan authentically for that student. And that was also a conversation I had to have with parents, to say, just let them make the mistakes. I will talk to them. I will make any corrections, or they will make corrections. But if I don't see the mistakes, then that can't happen. But at the most, I try to plan activities for 20 minutes per subject, or per activity, whatever it was, 20 minutes maximum.
Did you, thank you, were you given any guidance from your principal or from your school or from your borough that says, okay, the lessons in the physical classroom, your lesson is 40 minutes? Did they say to you, okay, online, we want you to do X amount of time on your lessons? How did you come up with that?
It wasn't explicitly said to us at the beginning. So at the beginning, we had to figure out what would work. I think there was an expectation that that's what would happen, that we would take whatever it was we're doing in the classroom and do the exact same thing online. However, we all know that that doesn't really work.
Exactly. So
I know that I had colleagues who were trying to do that. But for me, I looked at, what guidelines, what standards we had left to teach, and decided, knowing my students, the best way for me to get them to learn was to follow what I knew about child development and how children learn. So I'm never afraid of getting into trouble for doing that, because it works. Like, if you know what works and you do it right and there are results, then no one can say anything about that, I think.
Exactly. And you could back up. The thing about it is, as long as you could back up and justify what you're doing, it doesn't matter whether or not they don't think it's working. You, as the educator, is in the classroom and you know what works for your student. So there are my evidence. It doesn't matter what you think. You are not in the classroom. So I could tell you how what I'm doing with them works. And I think that's something educators need to be willing to do that a lot more.
Yes.
Because that's the only way we are going to get full autonomy of what we do. Because we need to be convincing. We need to have a conviction of what we are doing with our students works, and we could show the evidence. Because
Right.
what I've found in the past is a lot of these administrators or these principals, they used to be in the classroom once. They're no longer in the classroom. So
Right.
they do not know the challenges of my students.
Right.
So therefore, they're in no position to tell me how I should operate in the classroom, because you
Right.
don't know.
Exactly. And everything's changed. I've been teaching for
Exactly.
14 years. In that time,
Yeah.
education has changed. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine what it was like when they were teaching
Yeah.
before they became administrators. It's going to be so different
Yeah.
unless they're the kinds of administrators who have maintained some sort of a teaching schedule, which I don't think very many do.
Yeah.
So just in the time that I've been teaching, everything has changed so much. As a teacher, you have to adapt so quickly. I don't know how many other professions have to do that. And you have to teach yourself so many skills. The one good thing I can say about this experience is that I upped my tech skills, my tech game so much. I thought I was good before, but with this experience, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's so much better because I had to learn everything on my own.
Yeah. And it's, the interesting thing about that is every educator, we had no choice, as you say in the beginning of the session, that this was not part of our teachers training.
Yes.
We didn't have that. We was just thrown in and say, well, here you are, this is what's happening, and you need to quickly switch to online. And as an educator, you have no choice.
Right.
You cannot think because you have the students waiting on you. So you'll have to swim by whatever means necessary.
Exactly.
As you rightly say, you need to be up every time to make sure that you understand it. So when you're actually giving them the knowledge through this platform, that you know what's happening. I'm not saying that I've had loads of cock up, but at the same time, you had some idea of what you're meant to be doing initially.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's some of the challenges. And I feel like educators, we need to embrace where we came from to where we are now.
Right.
We told the knowledge that we needed to use all these platforms that, people are throwing out there, and you're thinking, okay, let me try this platform to see if it works better for me. Because we didn't even know anything of those platforms. Now we are learning those things because we have no choice.
Yes, it's true.
And it's a real challenge.
Yep.
Another question is in terms of the duration. How do you feel? I understand that you say that, the small bits, right?
Yes.
Do you feel that how you've actually now teaching online, is there anything you are going to take into the classroom with how you are teaching in terms of the duration online?
I think I've learned that my students are perhaps more capable and more resilient than I thought they were before. And that's not to say that I'm a teacher who helps them every turn of the way. That's not it at all. I do know that my role is to guide them into becoming more independent learners and thinkers. But this experience has shown me that there are different ways of doing that. And so if we were to go back to campus during the next school year, for example, I think I would incorporate even more project-based learning, if I could, and do that from the beginning of the year. Prior to this year, I'd only done that with the Genius Hour, where students could research any topic they were interested in. And I would, with my guidance, they would sort of do a culminating project and share that with the community. But I think more practice with projects needs to begin at the start of the year, so that students get that that sense of motivation and buy-in they have with those personal projects, to find ways of incorporating that throughout the entire curriculum, which I know is a challenge because as a teacher, I don't necessarily decide which curriculum or curricula we're going to use in a school, but I could try to find ways to get my students to buy into it as well. And that's what I'm excited about incorporating.
Why did you say project learning? Do you find that project learning worked better with the students and the time whilst online?
Absolutely. So for the majority of the time that I've been teaching, I've taught in IB schools, the PYP schools, which is very much about encouraging students to be learners and inquirers and to be independent, just people of the world, right? To have a stake in their local environment and things like that. And what I found is that some schools don't have that that outlook. So when you think that you're going to a progressive school, perhaps the practice is not yet at a place where that's what students can do overall. Perhaps the curriculum is very traditional. Maybe they're using workbooks still, which there's nothing wrong with workbooks. I think there's a place for every tool that teachers use and that schools use, right? It's just about using them in a way that that works and moves students forward. But what I found is that in order for students to grow in the way that we need them to be that well-rounded person, an independent, confident learner, thinker, inquirer, that whatever it is I'm doing in my classroom has a positive effect. As they go on to university, they have to be that kind of learner who is independent, who has questions and who says, I'm going to go find out on my own, not because my teacher told me to, but because I want to. And because my teacher has taught me how to look for evidence of things, where to look, and shown me that there are various tools at my disposal, I don't even need her help at this point. I'm just going to go use those tools that I already have at my disposal. And that's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah, I can see that. Because a lot of the ways in some schools that how students are taught, as much as you want them to be independent learners, you need to look at the tools that you are giving them to enable them to be independent learners.
Right.
You know, and I think that's what I find that is missing in some schools. They say, no, well, students are not taking ownership, they're not taking responsibility. But are you looking at the ways by which you are teaching them? If you are going to give them all the handouts, if you are going to give them all the worksheets, you do not expect them to be independent learners.
Right.
Because they become so dependent, an expectation of having that, you know, when they don't get it becomes an issue.
Exactly. Exactly.
You see, that's one of those are some of the challenges I've had, you know, where students are expecting, you know, they expect to have all of that. And I'm saying, no. I want you to now go out and have a look for yourself and come back to me. Oh, but, you know, I usually get the handout. I usually get, you know, all this from my teacher, etc. Yes, but I'm not going to give it to you. I expect you to now go and find it yourself.
Right.
You know, you need to go and look for some things for yourself to enable you to know what to do the next time if I'm not there.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
You know, and some of the things I hear educators are saying is, oh, well, when I give it to them, I know that they're going to be able to do the work well. The question is, but are they able to do the work well, or are you spoon feeding them in what you expect them to know?
Exactly. And the thing is, we won't be around in the long term. It's all about growing that independence so that this is a person who is capable of leading an independent life and doing it well with as few struggles as possible.
That's true. I totally agree with that. And, you know, it's like, this is my argument with educators all the time, especially in some institution I've been in, because I've been told that I am not helping the students because I'm not giving them the work. I expect them to know how to go on, because if I show you how to do research, I expect you to practice to do it so that you become independent and know how to do it yourself.
Right.
But it becomes an expectation that the teacher have to actually give them all of that and the student themselves come to expect that.
Right.
So when they don't get it from some educators, they're seeing the educators are not being, in terms of not even not being fair, not being educated enough in that way, or not being the teacher in that way that they should be. That I found a real challenge in some of the schools I've actually been teaching in, because I am not a teacher to give students all the work. Right. I do expect them to go and be independent and search for the work, because I'm your scaffold. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be a scaffold for the students. And I said to them, one student, I said, do you know what a scaffold is? We are there to prop you up when you are actually about to fall off, not be there to feed you.
Right.
So that is a challenge. And that's another thing that students would not take responsibility because we're not allowing them to do that.
Right, that's true. But what I found is usually by the end of the year, those students who complain about the fact that you're not helping them in the way that they think you ought to be helping them, and their parents as well, usually by the end of the year, they're very grateful because they see the growth that has happened. The parents see the growth that has happened. The students feel the growth and are more self-aware about their abilities, and they're proud and they're more confident because they know that they can take those skills into the next year, no matter what happens. Just the problem is the pushback when you're trying to get them to be independent, and all of a sudden you have to defend yourself. And I think that's when I turn to research. That's when I turn to what published educational researchers have said, and that's when I share it. And I say, this is what I'm following. Here are the results that they found. Here are the results that I've had in my 14 years of teaching. And I'm doing this because I want the best for your child. And I hope that you see that this is a sincere wish of mine.
Yeah. I think the fact that you have them so young, it means that, and when you actually do that, you are developing them throughout the session. So when they actually get to, let's say, doing the A-levels in England, which would be A-levels, the next step to university, they already become independent students.
Yes.
They now know what to do, and they now know how to do it.
Right.
There's sometimes when I get the students, I'm getting them at age 16, 17, and I'm trying to instill that in them, but this is something they're not used to.
Exactly.
So it's like me trying to bring in a new concept for them. And they're thinking, oh, well, this is not what we used to. And I'm saying, but this is what I want you to be doing. And the interesting thing about that, I've got a number of students who've actually gone through the system, and I've gone to university, and they've actually called me back and said, Debbie, I understand why you were doing that. And I'm laughing. I'm thinking, not because I was trying to be hard, but because I was preparing you.
Yes, for life.
Exactly. And that's what, we need to know. We need to also realize that what we want from the student, we need to see how we are teaching them in order to get that.
Exactly.
And that is a challenge. Another thing is, in terms of, did you find that the way you teach the student online, do you think that they retain more with the length of time you teach them online to when you were teaching them in the classroom? So for example, you said that in online, you gave them short bits like the 20 minutes or the 15 minutes, etc. Right? In the classroom, you would have a 40 minutes lesson, right? In which environment do you think, or from your experience, is not even think anymore, you've seen, in which one of the environment have you seen that they have retained more than the other environment? For example, online and classroom. Which one do you feel which one you've observed that they have actually retained more information from?
Okay, so I think the challenge with that question is that because students have to submit their work online, and I'm not there to see the learning process, it's hard to gauge whether everything I see is completely authentic. For some students, I can only guess that it is authentic. And for others, I know that there's been another hand involved in that process. That is not mine, if you know what I'm saying. So right now it appears as if there has been exponential growth. But I question that because I'm not there. And I think so much of what we do as teachers, especially teachers of young students, is to observe our students in our learning environment, in their learning environment. I have to see them struggle when they're struggling, and I have to figure out why they're struggling so that I can plan my next lessons in order to help them. But if I'm not seeing that every single day, then it makes it hard for me to know exactly how much growth has happened. So what I would like to see, the part that I'm still, that I haven't figured out yet, is a truly authentic way of assessing their growth for every big concept or skill that we want them to have, assessing their growth during online learning in a way that that doesn't put duress on them because they are so young, in a way that means that it's not going to take the whole day. So that's something that I have yet to find. That's an authentic way of doing that. However, right now it looks like they grew exponentially. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So you feel that they grow in terms of the online platform more so than in the classroom?
It looks that way. It really does. But I think, again, that had a lot to do with the length of time that I plan my lessons for. And I think that's something I'm going to take back with me, and just really make sure I have that short mini lesson at the beginning and then student activities for the remainder of the lesson.
Yeah, well, for me, I do feel that, short burst of lessons
Yes.
is far more effective than having a whole period. Because even though the students I teach are older, and it's supposed to be a 40, sometimes a 40 minutes lesson, sometimes an hour lesson, there is no way I'm going to give them an hour session. I break up my lesson because my background is psychology. So I break it up in terms of the 30 minutes or the 20 minutes block, and then you do something else. Because because I have found that they retain a lot more with the short chunks than they do with a whole session.
Right. And after a certain period of time, they just aren't learning. It's just the words are rushing over them, or the information just isn't making a dent, and it's counterproductive.
Yeah. And I do feel that this is something need to be looked at in terms of timetabling.
Exactly.
Because there's no point in saying, okay, you have an hour lesson, and then you see other teachers are actually planning an hour lesson, and they haven't noticed that the students have zoned out.
Right. And that's where reflection comes in, right? Yeah. That should be a part of every teacher's planning, is that as you're looking at, if you've planned lessons for 2 days and on the first day you notice, oh, this really isn't going well, you have to change your lessons for the next day, because otherwise you're just giving them work without thinking about the efficacy of the work that you've assigned or planned. So that's a part of our work, is that we're reflecting on our practice, reflecting on the work that we are either assigning or doing with the students, and trying to make sure that it's doing what we want it to do.
That's very true. But the sad thing about it is, because in a lot of institutions, like the numbers game, and the fact is you're looking for results. I've seen educators they just have to give them the resources, just give. And I'm saying, okay, I understand that. How much of this the student actually take in? Yes. And they're not taking it in, but because yourself is under pressure and you're not willing to justify when you change it up. That's one of the problems I've noticed. As I keep on saying to people, I'm giving mine in 20 minutes chunk, and I could justify my reason. Yeah, that's the thing. We need to be willing to be able to justify in terms of learning.
Right.
The amount of output we are getting.
Right.
What we
I
are
think,
giving.
yeah, I think part of the problem is there's such a culture of silence in education. And I don't know if it's because many educators are women. I don't know if they've done research on this, but in elementary schools and primary schools, for example, the majority of educators are women.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's why, people think, stiff upper lip and all of that, just get on with it. But I think, at this point, I've been teaching for long enough, the same age, the same grade level, same classes. I know that I'm good at it. I know that I am an expert at it, or a master teacher. And my expectations are that I should be able to share my opinion and and speak to my expertise and be heard.
Yeah.
Because this is hard work. Not everyone can do it. And if I've gotten to the point where I can do it well, then I expect to be treated like the expert that I am. And if that's not the case, then, why do I wake up every day? It's such hard work. There are easier things to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's something that educators need to think about, is to speak up or discuss these things with each other, and just find ways to make their work environment a safe space for sharing their professional opinions, and administrators as well. That's part of their jobs. If you trust us to deliver this curriculum to students and make sure they're learning what they need to learn, then I think it's up to the administrators to make sure that they create a space where there are professional learning communities, where teachers can share ideas, and where administrators are participating and learning from the teachers as well. Because again, it's been a while since they've taught. And at this point, we are the experts in the classroom.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because a number of challenges I've noticed, and I've heard other educators are saying that, they are not treated as the expert.
Yes.
And it is so sad. I think exactly as you do, because I've been teaching for 25 years. And for me, I know that I'm good at what I do. That's why I'm still in it.
Right.
The fact that I am in the classroom every day, hold on. You need to be giving me credit for my expertise, because I am expert in the classroom. I know how to teach. I know what works and what doesn't work. That's the reason why I've said to all of them that I am not going to have students doing an hour session. I'm going to be breaking that up in 3 slots. So when you come to my lesson and you're looking and you're observing my lesson, you don't like it, that's your business, because I could demonstrate to you the amount of learning that have taken place.
Right.
You see, because another thing I do in my session as well, I do quite a lot of meditation. Because after every 20 minutes, I would actually get my students to stand up, to stretch,
breathe deeply, get a drink of water, all of that. We do that too. Yes.
Yeah. So that's one slot. When I do another 20 minutes or 25 minutes, I then say, okay, pens down, let's meditate for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I want you to meditate for 3 minutes. And we do meditate for 3 minutes. And the interesting thing about it is, these students are actually saying how much benefit they're getting from that. And I'm actually seeing the benefits myself, because I'm actually seeing the results of my teaching. That because I've broken it up so much, when they actually come back to the next topic, it's fresh.
Yes.
Because the brain could only take and retain on chunks between 15 and 20 minutes. So therefore, it is seen as new information. So therefore, it is fresh in the mind. And when I actually test them on it, I'm getting the result, because the mind is fresh and they're much more alert. So those are things I feel that it is important. That's one of my mission. I'm on a mission to actually show educators how we can actually get our students to retain a lot more by chunking the lesson, because administrators are not in the lesson with us. They need to give us the opportunity to demonstrate the results.
Right. Exactly. And there's research that supports that supports giving students breaks.
Yeah.
And breaking up the learning.
Yeah.
I mean, I do what you do as well. We stand up, we stretch, we breathe deeply. Sometimes we do a little bit of yoga, they go drink water.
Yeah.
There's research to support that all of that is really helpful. We do brain breaks,
Yeah.
go noodle, and do a little bit of dancing or
Yeah,
whatever
we
it
do
is.
that
That's
too.
what,
Yes.
you know. And even though we used to do that in the classroom, I incorporated that into our distance learning because I didn't want them
Brilliant.
staring at the screen the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I would say, all right, once you've done this activity, go and choose an activity from the screen-free activity menu. And that would have to be something that has nothing to do with the computer. And it's something that's fun inside the home, outside the home, whatever it is, but accessible to every single learner. And then they come back. So yeah, it's, I often think that the fast pace of the societies that we live in today has sort of seeped into the educational setting. And we're trying to push that on children, on students, and it's really unfair to have those expectations of them and to think that they're going to continue to learn the way that they need to. So in a way, we're sort of the gatekeepers and sort of keeping that adult lifestyle away from the classroom and protecting them from it and doing what we know works best for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's interesting because I have introduced a lot of dance in my session, because the beautiful thing about that is when you actually get the student to sit down after you've done that, their brain is so sharp.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's so amazing. And I've got evidence that it works, because another thing I've done with the student is halfway through the session, I'm saying to them, okay, down pen, we are going to go out of the building. So we'll actually go, and all of that will take about 10 minutes. And the amount of the results you get when you come back is so much more than this 10 minutes.
Exactly.
And it really, because it's like I got them to go out, run around the whole building, we come back, we jump on the spots, and it's like all of that and the results. And it's interesting because initially when I introduced it, coming to the school new, this is not something they're used to, and it's like, what's wrong with this mad teacher? You're looking at their facial expression. Right. Because I'm saying to them, okay, we are going outside. What do you mean we're going outside? I said, the only thing you take is your computer. We are going, leave your phones. We are going outside. And I'm saying to them, okay, we are going to jump on the spot. And it's like, I got initial resistance to say, you know what? If you don't want to do that, we are going to stay outside until you do that. I have no problem with that. And when they actually did, I say it's only for 10 minutes. Sometimes just 5-10 minutes. When we go back in the classroom, after 10 minutes in that classroom, they're reporting, oh my goodness, miss, oh my goodness, my brain is so much clearer. It is. Because you've broken up the activity and you've actually switched the activity, because we know once you actually switch activities, the brain begins to function again.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true.
Because my background is psychology, I tend to use a lot of psychological research in terms of my teaching of the student, because it is important that we actually break up the 1 hour, because as I said to one of my administrators, 1 hour doesn't work. The brain cannot sustain an hour learning.
No.
It makes no sense.
No, absolutely not.
Makes no sense. So that's one of the sadness in terms of those are the things that I feel need to be looked at. And the sad thing about it is you still have some administrators expecting teachers to do the same 1 hour online as they do offline. I spoke to one of my friends yesterday, because we were teaching in one of the institutions together. We no longer teach in the same place. And she said to me, Debbie, I have to log on from 9 o'clock and stay on until 5 o'clock. I said, that's nonsense. I said, what happened? She said, I have to teach the student for an hour at a time. I said, what? And the frustrating thing about it is having to be at the computer all the time. I said, yes, she have an hour's break from the computer, but she's still logging on. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. But I feel that there are lots of practices like that that teachers have to abide by, even before this pandemic occurred, that are counterproductive to the teacher's efficacy in the classroom and the student's ability to learn from their environment. So I think this has been an opportunity for schools and teachers and administrators to rethink their practices and to rethink what's absolutely necessary and what could change for the future. It's an opportunity to rethink schools and schooling. So I hope many of them do.
Yeah, I do agree with you there, because I do feel that this pandemic have been here for a reason for us in terms of education, because we have not restructured education.
Yes.
And as a result of all of that, it is restructuring education, because a lot of us would be taking some of the tools from the online platform to bring into our classroom because we see it works.
Right.
You know,
right. Absolutely.
So, yeah, exactly. So it is something that we need more autonomy in the classroom, and B, we need to be, this is the thing I keep on hammering on about, we need to be treated as the expert we are.
Exactly. Exactly. That is exactly right.
You know, it is frustrating when you're constantly being doubted as to whether or not what you're doing is working or is right.
It's frustrating, especially given how highly educated teachers are. I don't know what the requirements are in the UK, but in the US, 2 degrees and constant professional development. I know every summer I spend every summer just learning something new and making sure that I'm up to date. So if it's not doing a certification, it's reading a book or following some professional who is bringing something new to the table. We are very highly educated as professionals. And that needs to be, that's something that ought to be remembered when dealing with us.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, thank you very much. Let's look at tips. Have you got any tips that you would give any educator in relationship to the duration of the lessons and the retention of students' information and the recall of information?
Yes, I would say make a schedule for yourself. Keep the lessons short and include in your schedule breaks for the students and breaks for yourself because you're going to be doing even more screen work than you were before the switch to distance learning. You're going to be assessing all of your students' work online and give them feedback from the beginning, because that gives them buy-in to what they're doing, and have them give each other feedback as well. So that helps them remember to try their best because they know that, if you're using a platform like Seesaw, their friends are going to see their work. I also like to have them assess each other's work. So it's not just me assessing everything. And that was something I did before as well. But, these students assess me as well. They'll tell me, I ask their opinion every single day. They did a reflection. How did it go? What did you enjoy the most? What did you learn? Tell me one thing you learned today. What did I do well as a teacher? What do I need to work on? And they'll let me know. And that helps me reflect on my practice and try to improve for the next time as well. So keep the lessons short, set a schedule, one that you can live with and one that they can live with. Let them assess each other, communicate with each other, and get their reflections on how it's going, and just be willing to change, because again, this isn't normal.
Exactly.
Don't put that kind of pressure on yourself, because I don't know any other profession that does that. You're also experiencing the pandemic, as are they, and you need to take care of yourself. As they say, put the mask on yourself before you can help anyone else. So help yourself by keeping your expectations realistic.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. All I'm going to add extra is, in terms of we need to make sure that the classes, the lessons are short
Yes.
chunks and
Yes.
breaks in between, and do various exercise that will actually, relax the mind away from what you're actually teaching them. Whether or
Right.
not it's playing music, and,
Yeah.
it's like I play classical music throughout my lesson,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like they're just hearing the background music. Throughout my lesson, I get in there before the students, I put on classical music, and they would have it throughout my lesson, just very, low in the background, but it's there because I feel it actually helps them to relax. And after the 20-minute session, we actually, as I said earlier on, we either go outside, run around outside, or you jump on the spot, we do
Right.
meditation,
Right.
all that, because when they come in, although we've, people might, because I remember having a discussion with one of my managers, and she said, well, hold up, this is 15 or 20 minutes that you're doing that. Yes, but have you
Yes.
noticed the amount they've actually learned from coming back into the classroom? A lot more than had I taught them for these 15 minutes.
Right. And I think something that people ought to remember is that a long time ago, children used to play a whole lot more
Yes.
outside than they do
Yes.
now. And
Yes.
slowly their playtime, their recess time has just been cut shorter and shorter and
Yeah.
shorter to,
Yeah.
a time frame that is just, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Children learn best from play.
Yes,
And they
yes,
need to
yes.
release all of that energy. And
Yes.
I think everyone needs to remember that even more during this experience.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only for the children. I actually scheduled daily exercise
Mm,
into my schedule for myself. Before I
mm,
started my lessons, I would go for a walk and then do,
mm,
20 minutes of yoga
mm,
because I had anxiety. I was suffering from anxiety due to the pandemic.
mm,
And
mm,
I needed to find ways to calm my minds to be able
mm,
to take care of
mm,
my students and take
mhm,
care of their families as well, because they
mm.
were experiencing anxiety. And I
Yeah.
couldn't take care of them if I wasn't taking care of myself.
Exactly. That is so very true. That is very, very true. That's something we need to actually, be very conscious of in terms of, it's got to be two ways because you
Yes.
cannot give from an empty vessel. That's what I say to educators when I actually do the self-care program. You need to take care of yourself first. And it's like educators are saying to me, oh, but I haven't got time. Yes, but observe your behavior pattern when you are
Right.
teaching
Right.
because you are not giving yourself time. You are tired and you're frustrated.
Exactly.
So, it is so obvious.
Yes, it really is. And it makes a big difference when you take care of yourself. It makes
Yeah,
a difference in terms of your behavior and
yeah.
your perception of things and your reaction to anything that happens.
Yeah, it's very, very true. It's very, very true because in one of the schools I've been in, some of the educators say to me, "Oh, I need to come, come to your lesson, because your students all seems to be happy." And the students are saying, they said, "Oh yes, well, we do meditation in Debbie's lesson. We dance, etc." And they're thinking, "What are you doing with your students?" I say I could guarantee my results I'm getting from them is much higher than you
Yes.
teaching them for that 10 minutes extra.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Have you got anything else you want to say to us before we actually conclude that?
No, just that I think that teachers are everyday heroes. Every day, even before this experience, we are asked to perform at a level that is unimaginable in many other professions, except for
Yeah.
maybe doctors and nurses and, visible professions like that.
Yeah.
And we deliver. And
Yes.
then a pandemic happens and we still deliver. We deliver even more.
Yes.
And I think everyone should just keep in mind that at the end of the day, we're just people and we want to
Yes.
have lives like everyone else. We want to have longevity and we want to enjoy the experience like everyone
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah.
just, I think everyone should remember to give to themselves as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I couldn't put it better myself. That, everybody needs to remember, especially parents, they need to remember educators are human beings as well.
Yes.
We're human just like you. We have stress level just like you. And when you're saying that, oh, well, it is your job, we know it's our job, but we go over and beyond. We are
Yes.
not complaining. Remember that. I keep on
Right.
reminding people on my platform. We are not complaining. We are just reminding you that we go over and above as educators because we love what we do. And
Right.
when our students succeed, we succeed as well. No
Right.
teacher wants student to fail, because when a student fails, you feel as if you also fail. You feel as
Exactly.
if you have not done enough. You feel as if,
Exactly.
you know, you haven't supported the student enough. But there's
Right.
sometimes we also have to remember we cannot be so hard on ourselves, because some students you just cannot save. Some students you just cannot get them to perform at that time. We're not saying that they may not be able to perform later on in life, but at that
Right.
time, as the teacher, you're not able to make them do exactly what they expect to do.
That's
So
true.
that's something we need to remember as well. And something else, we just have to remember that when we teach it, we need to give them chunks and how the brain operates, that they're able to retain and recall the information that we're giving them. There is no point in actually pumping information. It is
Right.
not going anywhere. It's just sitting at the surface of the brain, and they're not able to recall the information because they have information overloads.
Exactly.
And too often we tend to do that because we are pressured from administrator. We are giving student work and it becomes information overload. That's
That's
why we're
true.
not getting the result we expect.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Facebook. I enjoyed another session. I'm sure some of you have learned quite a lot from this session, because what we are aiming to do is to give you the real information and to give you the real situation that we as education are experiencing on a daily basis, not what someone else have said that we do. We are telling you exactly what we do. Tomorrow I'll be having another session, would be slightly earlier than normal, would be about, I think it's about 10, 11 o'clock. I'll actually post it on the page so people know when I'm coming back on. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if any of you female educators out there would like to join me on this roundtable, feel free to PM me so that we can then have another discussion, and then you could actually tell your story as it is. We should not allow anyone else to tell our story for us, because as we
Exactly.
know, they never tell it right.
That's true.
Thank you very much, Facebook. And